I love your logo.
There's definitely a lot going on. I'd be remiss if I didn't admit that I am a Taurus. The bull, came up from constellation, but in thinking of the bull is strategically on the right of our word mark, looking back. He's also looking to the left, but he's looking back because he's like, I'm going to drive or help you move forward, i.e. grow, secure you through your life cycle, secure you through your journey. Then he's looking left for the shift left, start left. But then there's a star on his tail. That's the actionable insights. It should look like a bunch of kind of like data points connecting, and it forms something that's recognizable, and then an insight. He's looking at the insight, but he's also looking left. Hey, I'm guarding you guys as you go forward.
Jeremy, welcome to Tech Scenes Unplugged. Thanks for joining me.
Jeff, thank you for the invitation and pre-conversation. I'm excited to start it.
Yeah, we've had a few pre-conversations here on this one, so this is going to be good. So let's start from the top. Tell me about StartLeft Security.
StartLeft Security. Well, as the name implies, we're all about driving security from the start. And what we tend to see missing in cybersecurity and the culture around building products or software products is, and this is cybersecurity in general, but people that are building and maintaining or doing security work or building the software are tended to be forgotten. So, you see all this AI coming out, and everybody's scared about losing their jobs or whatever. AI should be speeding jobs up and helping, empower people, right? And so, but you still cannot get rid of people. And that also applies to developers. You can add more security functionality. You do a whole bunch of new cool stuff with AI, but you still need people to take what is being given and drive that security work. And so in the past, like, developers have been traditionally forgotten that they aren't security experts. And so StartLeft, we're trying to build a platform that not only is inclusive of all the security that software needs, but also empowering the developers and the people that build and maintain it. And that's the whole StartLeft methodology.
It's interesting because there's so much code out there. There's so much infrastructure out there. And I think most people just think it's secure and it works and there won't be any problems. But that's not the case.
You're absolutely right. And what I saw a couple of years ago is there was an insurance company came out. The CEO was basically saying our whole economy, all critical infrastructure is built on fragile software. And CISA just came out and said, secure by design. Our whole economy is built on fragile software. Like, it's coming to a head. And honestly speaking, I've been in software for 17, 18 years now. When I first got into the industry, it was not about security. I wasn't paying attention to security. Companies hired us to innovate and build products. And we're a capitalism society, and we're chasing the dollars. The business value of software is, can I convince people to exchange dollars for what I created, right? And where does security fit in there?
Right.
And so let's be honest, nobody likes doing security. The only reason why people are starting to do security today is, one, it's becoming regulated heavily, right? And there's actually an executive order that's coming out in a couple days that we're privy to that is going to drive this stuff into law, right? And so that's where people start to do security. What else is also driving it is, I think insurance or cyber insurance is actually going to be a growth factor of, we can no longer rely on incident response programs. And that's what insurance providers are basing cyber insurance on. Well, if the technology is there and you can prove that companies are doing proactive and reactive things and they're good at it and they can validate that they're doing the things, insurance providers should be able to enforce that. And if you're asking for a claim and you can't show that you've been doing the things, well,
Right.
the insurance providers don't have to pay the claim. And so I think the insurance providers, along with regulation, can actually drive what we're trying to do here very, very quickly. It's just insurance moves slow. So,
It
um,
does.
but yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
I mean, you guys popped up quick. Like you guys had a quick start here. Like where are you focused? What's the beachhead right now for you guys? Like where are you focused from like a client perspective and a product perspective?
We popped up quick as a brand, I think, because it's a cool brand. People are talking about StartLeft as a methodology, not our brand, and saying StartLeft is the right way to do things, which is really cool that we were able to steal that brand and trademark it, right?
Right.
Um, which I wish I could say I was genius enough to say this 10 years ago, but I knew you said we came out fast, but I've been actually working on this for a decade. 2015, we started customer development, R&D, all that kind of stuff. Man, it's been a journey. And so I had patents before the category was even a thought on this category. So now I'm actually able to see and correlate what's about to happen today in the future, and that's pretty cool to see. Our beachhead really is focused in on. I think there's a couple things that have been in our favor, which is a couple breaches that have occurred over the last couple of years, which has driven policy executive orders around what we call software bill of materials or supply chain risk management. And so those are typically our beachhead capabilities where, companies are talking about it. It's a push and a pull dynamic, meaning let's say our go to market is a mid market software as a service organization. Our value proposition to them is very different than an enterprise. But to them, they're getting that push from the regulation from their enterprise clients of, hey, you want to validate that your security is actually there and you're doing it day in and day out, right? So that's starting to become part of the procurement process. The pull is, you know, no SOC 2 and these compliance requirements are no longer enough that they want to actually they want to drive a security conscious culture. And so like for the first time ever, we're seeing CTOs get involved in the security conversation. And it's because that aha moment is here. And this should be an aha moment for every software as a service CEO. Um, if your software product goes down because of a vulnerability or because of a security issue, I'll give you something easier. You are not maintaining your software. As simple as that sounds, that's what most companies are going through. A security vulnerability happens over time because you're not maintaining it. But what happens if, it becomes unavailable and your customers are not able to use that software because it goes down? And I'm not talking about like ransomware or malware or anything like that. I'm talking about the system goes down because you're not maintaining it. And like something
Right.
happens, like a misconfiguration or something.
Well, it's interesting to think about, like, companies that are building, any software, especially enterprise software, how many different hands are in that, current employees, past employees, new employees,
Yep.
vendors. I mean, all sorts of different like hands are involved in that. And, add on the new layer of AI coding and all sorts of stuff that's happening. Right. And so, who owns that? And I know when developers exit a company and they feel like, "Whew, I don't have to deal with that anymore." You know what I mean? They go on to their next one, but
Yep.
I mean, code just keeps piling up.
Yep.
It just keeps on piling up,
It
and
does.
so there's definitely a issue with the gaps within that and keeping it secure. Now, I wanna sidetrack us a little bit. Um, I love your logo. I said this before. Like, it is a fresh, like, tell me what is behind your logo? I'm just curious. Like, there's a lot going on in it, and it's definitely cool.
There's definitely a lot going on. I'd be remiss to admit if I didn't admit that I am a Taurus. Um, so the Taurus kind of the bull, came up from constellation. But in thinking of the what we're doing, we're built on an analytics platform. We're focused on data. We're focused on telemetry. We're focused on actionable insight. And our competition, majority of them just focus on like aggregation of security scans, and that's cool and all. That's table stakes.
Right.
What you do with the data, what you're monitoring with like behavior, activity, things that have an incident that occurred in the past, combined with an incident that occurred, within this week. Those two data points can be correlated, and this could happen in this tool versus another tool, right? And so our platform is, yeah, like I said, we do scans, we do all that stuff, but what are we doing with the data? And so the bull is strategically on the right of our word mark, looking back. Well, he's also looking to the left, right?
Yeah.
But he's looking back because he's like, I'm going to drive or help you move forward, i.e., grow, secure you through your life cycle, secure you through your journey, right? Then he's looking left for the shift left, or I'm sorry, the start left. Uh,
Yep.
but then there's a star on his tail, right? And that's the actionable insights. And so it should look like a bunch of kind of like data points connecting, and it
Yep.
forms a actual, you know, something that's recognizable, and then an insight. And so he's looking at the insight, but he's also looking left. Hey, I'm guarding you guys as you go forward. So there's a lot of thought
That's
put
awesome.
into it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up because sometimes people create a logo because it just looks cool. And in your case, it looks cool, but I know you and I had already talked about it, and I want to talk about it again. But there's a lot of thought put into that, and I think that matters. And I think it reflects what you guys are doing. Is there's been a lot of thought put into what you guys are doing. It's not like, hey, I got an idea. There's been a lot of thought put into what you guys are doing and what you built. So it brings me to this question. The question is, why this for you? Like, you could have done a lot of different things, and this isn't an easy industry. Why did you choose this industry, and why
Oh my
where
God. Yeah, cybersecurity is hard.
it
um,
is?
I thought IT and software development, like the egos were huge. Like security is like ridiculously hard. Everybody wants to they say like, oh, you can't do that, or they just want to like poke holes in everything instead of, do we actually solve this problem? Yes. Can there be a iteration where we can solve it a little bit better? Maybe. No, nothing's perfect all the time. That's why we're taking feedback. But yeah, it is hard, man. The reason why is uh, we took a stab at solving this from a software engineering or software engineer's perspective. And the software engineer's perspective, if you look back at DevOps and Agile Manifesto, is applying lean type of thinking and providing the most amount of business value with the least amount of waste. And so, if security is going to align to software development, you have to have that mantra. You have to think in that way. And so, from our perspective, and we want to enable software startups, like high growth companies, to be able to compete. And so, what that means is like doing all these things in one platform, and not selling, hey, you have to buy this one tool and it's going to eat up all of your security budget. Well, why can't we offer more for less the cost, but then enable software startups to not adopt an enterprise strategy where they have to buy the big expensive tools like that
Right.
why are you bringing that to a startup culture? And so we thought about, hey, if we're going to enable engineers, let's think like engineers. Let's provide a lot of business value for the least amount of cost, least amount of waste, and enable developers to get better, right? And
Yep.
developers always like to get better, and they like to showcase their expertise. And that was the kind of the initial why.
Yep.
And at my previous company, like we started automating, we started doing all these things, and it was realistically a problem we were solving for ourselves. And then our clients were like, "You guys should probably turn this out and build a product company from it." So we did. There was a little hiccup earlier on that where I took a step back and I was a little bit scared to take it
Mm.
and turn it into another company. And the other why is a personal story of mine, and it's about my daughter. Using a medical device, and she's a type 1 diabetic. We
Okay.
use continuous glucose monitoring for her blood sugars. It changed our lives. We trusted it. Overnight one night, it did not alarm us the entire night. No notification. She was a 47 blood sugar, and if you know
That's
diabetes,
low.
that's a
That's low.
that's very low. She could have
Yep.
gone unconscious. She could have got seizures. She could have actually died. Like there's well-known statistics around diabetics dying in their sleep. And so
Yeah.
um, I did a little research, and it's a thing called code rot or software decay. And if you deploy something out to the iPhone or the a mobile device, and you're not maintaining that, and the OS continuously updates over a 2-year period, which is what happened, um, things start to break. And
Right.
the things that started to break actually was life threatening. Right. And so that was a very, very scary thing. And that was my first aha, even being in software for almost 10 years at that point, that this can actually impact somebody's life or the
Yep.
business's life cycle. It can impact anybody and anything anywhere because of crappy code.
Definitely a triggering story for me growing up with a dad that was diabetic, and I remember being a little kid and his blood sugar is low, and I'm like the only one home, and I'm the one that has to like figure out how to help him out. And as and then my father-in-law also diabetic, and those devices that they have now make you feel so reassured. But the fact that things like that can go wrong and you can't trust them, that's scary. And that's
It's
just like one example of probably millions, right? Like of infrastructure and code
yeah,
issues.
it's actually interesting. In fact, like I'll have to hand it to Travelers Insurance. Um,
Yeah.
they did a whole like study, and they have a bunch of posts out there, white papers on like what insurance products can match to different like technology liability issues, right? Whether it's a security or whatever, like product liability is a huge like untalked about thing.
Yeah.
But that spans medical device. I mean, look at we're having if we're talking about software going into self-driving cars, that okay, they're updating the code, right? Because the whole, oh, we can
Right.
download from the cloud, blah blah blah. Cool.
Yeah.
But is the code that you're updating actually high quality and secure? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
So you know,
Well, I was actually thinking of that while you were also telling that story, because I do have I have a Tesla that uh it's autonomous. I kind of trust it, and then I don't trust it.
yeah,
And you know how frustrating it is sometimes, even if you like jump on Zoom and all of a sudden Zoom's different one day. Your car's like that sometimes. You'll jump in and you're like, where'd everything go? Like everything has moved. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
um, and even the screen itself takes visual to move something. Like you have to look at that screen to actually do something. You can't just feel for a knob and turn it.
yep.
So a lot of innovation that's happening is not always super positive innovation. And then once we rely on it, I think that's where it gets scary
Yeah.
and more need for security and Q&A and testing and all that. But when your car is driving you around, 70 miles an hour and you're in a tin can and you're not in control, that's a new world for sure, right?
It is, yeah. And I mean, but as a society, especially in the United States, we are not people centric. Like I was just having a conversation about this. Europe, Everybody else is people centric. All their compliance, their laws around, hey, you got to protect their data, right? You got to protect, the people, right? And so like there's a lot more stringent laws and requirements going out. United States, we're not incentivized. Like and so that incentivization needs to change across every single layer, right? Like
Yeah.
our investors like more features, more capabilities that make more sales. Like security is not a conversation. Um, it's how are you getting more sales faster, right? And so, but nobody's holding anybody accountable, which is another problem.
Speaking of investors, you have a great list of investors that have joined you guys. Like, what was the journey to find them, and who did you find, and why did you select those?
Initially, I wasn't talking to anybody in cyber security to invest in us, and I think that was like a twofold learning opportunity. One was my intuition came true a couple times where, um, especially in that space, like investors do share decks and they're doing competitive intelligence for portfolio companies or investments that they're about to make.
Right.
And so that's a kind of a little bit shady practice where, a founder's kind of nightmare is like sharing their idea and it gets like plastered all over like a couple competitors. Hey, here's your competitor stuff. That happened a few
Right.
times, right? So I was kind of reluctant to go into and talk to cybersecurity investors because I got burned a few times, and you kind of have to get past that because the name of the game is execution. What I found is we're better at innovating. What we suck at is marketing and getting our name out there. Because when we do show our platform, they're like, "Holy crap, you guys have more capability than this 50, $80 million funded company. We just can't get out of stealth." So
Well, that's one thing you can fix, though, right?
yeah,
Like,
it
if
is.
there's something that you can fix that.
And
You
we're
can't
working on
fix
that.
being more innovative than someone else oftentimes. Right?
Yep, and we're working on that right now, right? Like, so how do we showcase that? But that also led me to, okay, I need some investors that are going to give us some clout in the space. I strategically reached out or um, went through my network on who is connected to specific people, and there were very specific investors that I wanted to talk to. Some of them I didn't get right that I wanted on our team. In fact, some of them that I didn't get the first time, we're having conversations now, right? So they wanted to
That
see,
definitely happens.
yeah. So at first it's like, man, uh, you're a little bit butthurt because you're like, I like invest on me now because I won't need you later, kind of thing. And you don't say those things because you're like, I'm gonna have this conversation with you in a couple years.
Right.
But yeah, no, there was a couple investors that I wanted. We fortunately did get a couple of the big ones like Gula and Litical that gave us clout. And so these people,
Those are great groups.
yeah. So Gula, obviously founders at Tenable, very ingrained in the cybersecurity space, still very active, right? Litical Ventures, big cybersecurity investors too. And so once you kind of get those behind you, um, and to your point about why, they sold us on how they were going to help us. And most investors will sell you the same exact damn thing. Hey, we're gonna help you guys make connections. We're gonna help you guys do this, blah blah. And majority of them never show up in any way, just as the check. I
Right.
will say uh, these investors have been very helpful from a board perspective, but also um, I talk to them quite a bit, and they're an extension of our team from an advisor standpoint. Where I'm like, hey, I need this talent, or I need access to this, or can you make this intro?
The good investors wanna be an extension of the team. The good investors wanna have high communication. I work with hundreds of investors, and the best ones always talk about that. Like, they want transparency, they want communication, they wanna be part of the team. They wanna know what's going on so they can see how they can help or connect to others that can help.
Right.
The ones that are just writing checks and moving on are typically not the ones that people want to work with. And, the more you're in the industry, you know who the ones are
Yep.
that are the right ones for you. And, frankly, there are some CEOs that like just the checks and like, we got it. And those may work for those other people too. So
Yeah. And I
I
can
do
see.
believe that, them wanting that communication is definitely a good sign of, what I believe, like what I name my company Collective Genius. Like it's gonna take a tribe to succeed.
It really does. Yeah, it does. And you have to kiss a lot of frogs, right? And so we'll probably get into that later.
Well, that brings up the one of the topics that you wanted to talk about, and we talked about a little bit in the past is startup moochers, right?
Yeah.
How do you find a startup moocher?
I don't think you have to seek them out. I think they find you.
No, how do you define it? Not how do you find them? Yeah, they definitely find you.
Oh, yeah. I don't there's people that will sell you a vision, sell you that they're to help you with strategy, connections, investment, blah blah. And like I said before, is like in a startup, um, if I were at any company, I would hire somebody that was successful in a startup. Just simply
Right.
because you cannot hide in a startup. Um, every single person in a startup is key. Every single person has to sign up for well more than they probably can, actually do. But you know,
Right.
these people sign up for it and they get it done. And so
Yep.
you can quickly weed out the people that are not going to do it, right? And so where in an enterprise you can hide for years and not execute and just be like hey, do this, or like just kind of like pass the buck,
Right.
and so when we're talking about like a full-time employee, like you know you got to deliver. Like if like every single person on the team, and we're small teams where, who cares if this is engineering or product or sales or marketing? We're all talking like almost every single day and like what's working, what's not, what new capability. Like we have to all be executing and everybody needs to hold their part of the bargain.
Early stage companies and growth stage companies motivations are aligned, and if it done right, and that's why I'm really, big on with peak OS, like tools like OKRs and KPIs and defining roles and responsibilities, defining your vision, your 1 year plan. By using tools like that,
Yep.
all of them have like dates, all of them have names on them. And I think that even gives another layer of not only transparency, but communication of where we're going, what we need to do, who's going to do it, how we're going to do it.
Yep.
And like you said, things are changing all the time, and what's working, what's not working. We have to shift all the time. Having that clarity, really, you can tell immediately if you have the right people or not. And
100%.
sometimes you won't be successful, but it's not the person, right? So if you're not clear about those things, sometimes people say, "Oh, that person's not working out." No, that person actually is the right person. It's just that you didn't have clarity of what you're doing and how you're going to do it,
Yep.
and now they look like they're the wrong person. So I have found that many times too. I also have found creating clarity and visibility in a company, the wrong people will leave very quickly because they don't want that. They want to hide.
To kind of back you up on what you just said, I was scared to put more discipline and rigor in the organization because of that. Like the scare I might lose specific people.
Right.
But then to your point, like that did happen, but also the ones that we gave clarity to and we actually started working towards like assigning and naming goals like via numbers or whatever projects, and then like having it all visible. That's when stuff really started to execute, and like
Exactly.
everybody seems like they have superpowers on the team now. It's like, holy crap, like I didn't know that you were going to get that done within a week period, but you're actually like killing it.
What's nice about that is once you have clarity, it allows the team to run.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you don't have clarity, they're walking in the wrong direction.
Yep.
They're not sure. They're asking questions. They're slow. But once you it's like anything, like you get a lot done the day before you leave on vacation because you make a list, define what you need to do, and then you go run and get all those things done.
Yep.
when you can do that with your organization and they also know what everybody else is doing, like, then you can let them run. And I think that's speed matters in this case. Speed and a lot of other things. But if people are walking around not sure of what to do or how to do it or who's doing it, that's a mess. And I really believe the teams over the last 20 years I've worked with growth companies and startups, the most organized teams always win. They always win, or they find a way to win. You know, if
I agree.
they may have lost for a little while, but
Yep.
they eventually find the way to win. It's the organized teams, not the ones that are like, it's chaos. It's the startup. It's chaos. That's just a fallacy.
I agree with you. Yeah, and I mean, I even applied this to our advisory board too, right? So, I'll back up and kind of go back to the Moochers for a second, and then back you up on what you were saying too. But there's a lot of like advisors or vendors that come and sell specifically to startups, the world, right? I'm going to help you with this. I'm going to help you with that. I A couple of us call them like celebrity executives, where like they'll sell you, hey, just being associated with me will help your brand awareness because of my brand awareness. And anybody that's I bid on it a few times, and they did absolutely nothing for us. And but they wanted a bunch of equity because of their name and their association. And I'm like, I learned before this that we're going to do performance-based metrics in our contract. Like, what does the company need? And if this advisor cannot help us achieve this, and we put those metrics in the contract, like, nobody gets equity, and nobody can ask questions.
Right.
And so, applying what you just said to advisors, like, I have a leaderboard of like, hey, this advisor helped us do this. Like, who's going to help us, and who's kind of like not doing anything, right? And so like it kind of helps to show like, hey, somebody's not just sitting there wanting or just accepting equity. We're actually all working on, because here's the thing, if nobody's helping them working on actually creating the value of the company, like, our equity is worth nothing. So,
Right.
we all have to be marching in the same direction. So we also have, projects and, goals for advisors as well. What I didn't realize is so many people need so much management, not micromanaging, but, disciplined, goal setting and, running orders.
I think it's in this case, in building a company that's doing something that is new or has never been done before. When you're really at that leading edge, teams have to be very cross-functional. The goals that you set involves a lot of different people. And I think that's why I believe OKRs work really well if you use them the correct way. There's some nuances to OKRs that most people get wrong. But OKRs work really well for cross-functional teams because you can really define what that objective is or that goal, and then also define like, how are we actually going to achieve this, which is typically what people are wrong with key results. They just define how to measure that objective. You want to talk about, how do we actually achieve this? And that how, if you don't have that conversation, then you can't figure out the strategy of actually achieving that objective and then defining who's going to do what. And that's what's really hard about early stage companies, is that it's so cross-functional in nature. You really need to define those things. And sometimes you'll define them and find out we weren't successful at that. But that's still an asset to go, that doesn't work. Let's try this now.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, let's try this now. And eventually you'll start to find things that work, and then you double down, triple down on those.
Yep.
But it's kind of like the scientific method of like, from day one for you, I'm sure it was like, let's see if this works. We'll see if this works. Right. And then you collect what works. And then you start to grow a team. And now you have a team of teams that is constantly doing that in biz dev, in engineering, in product,
Yep.
And I think that's the complexity of growth companies or companies doing things that haven't been done before, that some people just don't get. There's so much exploring and trying to figure it out, and then putting it together and having a communication cadence.
Yep.
That everybody's learning together and has the information they need to keep on moving forward. And that's just difficult.
It's very difficult. And I was the only business side person that wasn't on the engineering until we got over $1 million in revenue. And so the things that I did day in and day out, like, I'd never operationalized. I didn't process like who's going to do what, when people
Right.
come in. And so as we raised capital and we scaled out pretty quickly, hit that first iteration, I'm like, why isn't this getting done? And so it became like a collaborative thing is like, hey, I thought this was a product manager thing.
Mhm.
Well, in actuality, he's like, oh, but I thought that was a sales thing. And then getting them both on the phone and be like, okay, let's split this apart. What part is product? What part is sales?
Right.
Right. And so, but once we have that collaboration and we got it like agreed upon, then it was, oh, this thing is actually getting done now,
Yeah.
by both parties. It just nobody had clarity on what it was
Right.
that they were supposed to do at that stage in the process, right?
Yeah.
And so that
It's
was a
really that's
great.
something that happens all the time too. I mean, I'm going into a session tomorrow with a team that I work with, and the annual session, and we do roles and responsibilities once a year. So I have everybody on the leadership team define their role uh, and their top 5 responsibilities. And tomorrow we're going to share those. We're going to go from the CEO to the head of sales to marketing, and we share those and we ask questions. Does anybody have any questions on this? Is there overlap? Is there something you have a challenge where you maybe you went to this person, but you think you're supposed to go to this person? And it's so interesting in that we do that once a year with every single team. Or if they have new team members, we do it to get everybody up to speed. But just that simple 45 minutes of doing that,
Yeah.
so many conversations about, oh, I thought you were doing this, or oh, that's me. Okay, people are willing to do it. It's just sometimes it's not clear. And then over the year, I always tell them like put it in triage if it's a triage of the process that we use when we have issues or opportunities. Throw it in triage if you're unclear about a role or responsibility. Let's fix that right away. But it seems so simple, right? It just seems so simple. But at 45 minutes with the leadership team once a year, and people are crystal clear on what they own, and knowing what you own allows you to run.
I like that. Because like I used to get more frustrated because I just assumed like somebody would just pick up the ball and move it.
Right.
But so admittedly, we probably do need a little bit more process and around triage.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And so
Triage is great. I mean, triage is for our weekly meetings. That's the majority of the meeting. So we on off done on our objectives, our key results, our KPIs, and then it's anything that's off is in triage, and we go through it and write it. Or if there's any other discussions or things that we need that have issues or opportunities, go through there, and we have a process to get outcomes on those. Versus going around in that circle and just everybody giving updates. You don't
yeah,
need updates if we already defined what we're doing.
yeah,
Updates are really discussions too, and you get on that one discussion that you always have, and then all of a sudden the meeting's over, and you do that same discussion next week again, and it's just not productive.
yeah. No, that makes sense. I would say there's one person that joined the leadership team recently, who's been involved in something similar that you're talking about, and so they've brought some discipline and rigor and process to those meetings too.
Yeah.
And it sounds similar to what you're saying, but we've only been doing it for about 2 months now, so like we're getting better. We're flexing and working out that muscle.
So one other thing I wanted to talk about with you is, which it's talked about, but I don't think it's talked about enough. But being a founder, starting something new, it's difficult, and just mental health is like a thing that I don't think is talked about enough with founders. And I think part of the issue with it is when you're out raising money, you have to have some sort of front. You mean like you have to be confident. You have to have your plan. You have to really think about what you're saying. When you're hiring employees, same thing. You have to share, this opportunity. You're putting them on your back. Your clients, everybody is. You're kind of like as a CEO. I believe everybody is your boss. Is what it feels like. And so there's not a lot of opportunity to go places or talk to people. I think executive coaches are amazing if you get the right executive coach within that knows your kind of the growth space. But there's not a lot of opportunities to talk to people, and I think people bottle that up or they bring it home. I know you're into hacking and biohacking and like, right? So you're in shape. Like, what do you do around mental health for you? Like, what's work for you?
Um, I'll say this, and I do call this coaching, because I think therapy does have a negative connotation for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah,
But like
it does though, right? It really does,
it,
and I don't know why either.
it doesn't in fact, like if somebody's going through therapy or gone through therapy, like they've actually worked on their stuff, right? And so, not that I had a bad childhood or anything like that, but like they're every single person, every single human being, I well, a high percentage, let's say, have
Yeah.
been through hardships in their life or some sort of thing that impacted them. And so, even doctors say like, your body keeps the score, right? And so even when you go to a chiropractor, they're like, "Oh, have you been in an accident?" Well, last time I've been to the chiropractor, I was like, "I haven't been in a bad accident. I've been in a couple like really small, like somebody hit me from behind like a couple years ago. They were going like 10 miles an hour." Well, the body keeps score. Um,
Yeah.
and he's like, "That's probably why your muscles up on your back like get like this sometimes, and I gotta pop them out. And
Yeah.
like your body feels that, right? And you naturally, whether you're conscious about it or subconscious about it, it's impacting you, it's affecting you, right? And so, therapy, I went back and processed things that I didn't think that were bothering me, or my therapist brought me back to let's call the recession back in 2008, 2009, right? And like there were some hardships that me and my family experienced from that time, 2008 to almost 2015. Like I lost two houses during that time. Like I had to start over. I started one of our first businesses at that time. Like we were
Yeah.
poor as shit. And like we were almost on the street. And
Right.
like my therapist was like, you proactively prepared for that and you made the right decisions and you continuously made the right decisions. And you're a very risk management kind of person. She's like,
Mhm.
so I understand why you went in the industry that you went into. um, but she kind of like got me to think like, hey, you can't be in control of every little thing. Like you cannot control every single outcome. But if you can make the right choices, make the right decision, kind of run scenarios and like make sure that you can guide towards an outcome that you want,
Right.
it's you can go that direction and you're not necessarily going to be like that control, so like anyway, that's kind of one example, but like um I always go to therapy just to process stuff, but also like CEOs are lonely, right? And you
Mhm.
know, I can't ever put my poker face down. Never.
Right.
Right? So I have people, friends, family all the time. They're like, "You have so much stress daily that I don't deal with in a year. And how are you keeping it together?" Right? And I'm like, I'm just used to it by now.
Yeah.
But the change in mindset and the change in like in being able to go and talk to somebody and even just bitch a little bit, right? Like
Right.
I'm just like, hey, I'm just complaining just because I don't get to complain to anybody else.
Yeah. Right.
Right. But like being able to do that, therapy, I think, is a really good thing. Biohacking, yes, I'm in shape. Yes, I believe in hormone therapy and getting your blood work and seeing, what's missing and what you can improve on. I also believe that if you're not working out or doing something active on a daily basis, I don't care if it's stretching, if it's walking a couple miles, like doing something actually produces the chemicals that you should be having to control depression and anxiety. Um,
Yeah.
get out, do yoga, figure out whatever that hobby is or set of
Just don't
hobbies.
do jujitsu before you film the tech scenes unplugged.
Are you really
'Cause
sore?
I have scratches on my face right now that I'm hoping that my camera's not picking up.
I'm like, your
Um,
ears broken.
yeah, no, my body's broken for sure, but like, I trained this morning
Yeah.
and, I did say to one person like, "Hey, Don't mess with my face because I got to film today later.
It's the moneymaker.
I don't know if it's the moneymaker.
Yeah, but go like I always like experiment with, as an example, I'm not going to give them a shout out because I don't know if it works yet, but like, I sent in some samples of my DNA, let's say.
Yeah.
They come back and give you a plan to what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, what supplements you should be taking, all that kind of stuff. So like,
Is that the Gary Brecka one, the 10x? Which
I,
one did you do?
I'm not giving them
I haven't done any of them yet, but I definitely follow that stuff.
product placement yet. I can't give them product placement yet. We'll
There's a lot of things out there, but and more to come. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's more to come.
There is, yeah.
Wow.
But like, I don't know. I would say mental health. Yeah, it's definitely a big conversation, and even having a relationship with a co-founder where you guys can talk
Yeah.
and talk freely and just share, get personal with each other and stuff like that. It is hard because it is business, and you have to make business related decisions for the business, for the stakeholders, but also always keeping in mind there is the human element, and you have to back up your people. And so
Yeah.
it's very stressful, right? And to your point is like, I'm carrying everybody on my shoulders, their families, they're dependent on me. It's very, very stressful.
It is what it is. I definitely think it's a calling, when I feel like I was called to do the work that I do. And I think a lot of times I can never get the answer from people why they did it. I think it's because they're called to do it. There's just something that calls them to do it. And all the stuff that comes with it comes with it. And,
Yeah.
it's worth it in the long run, I think. So I have one more question for you. But before I ask that question, I've asked you a lot of questions. And so I'm going to allow you to ask me one question back.
I was not prepared for that.
Well, on purpose. It wasn't in the notes.
As a uh, fellow startup founder, how do you kind of like focus in on doing the right go to market things and making sure that the company is completely aligned to that? You've experimented a ton and you validated some things, you've validated some things, but everybody, says focus is key as you
Yeah.
as you go to market, right? And so how do you think about like narrowing down that focus and like doing that marching order, like getting everybody in line? How do you make the decision on what to focus on and go?
Yeah. Well, I do think it's an evolution, right? So I definitely think it's an evolution on that. I think getting the right CRO or head of sales that has the industry experience, one, but also the stage of company you're at experience. So if you want to go 5 to 50, or if you want to go 50 to 150, I think someone that's already been there and done that stage, but and also knows the industry, also knows that role and knows how to go to market. Like I think those are the first like three main things, and then it's, do they have the right culture fit with you? They share the same values, or what I like to get into is behaviors of the organization, and you can work with them. And then I think they need the main assets of what I wrote in the book too is like, they need to be symbiotic, work well with people. They need to have communication, alignment, learning. They have to be constantly want to learn. Like if you're working with someone that it feels like they know everything, it will never work in this environment, all right? Like, and then empowerment, that they are empowered to do what they need to do, but they're also going to empower others that they work with. I think those are the main ingredients of having someone that has that knowledge and ability that can execute, right? I think that's super important. And then I think it's taking all the knowledge that you have. I like to use a analogy of like climbing peaks. Each peak is a year, and we're going towards that mission statement. which is the North Star. But as you elevate through this time, you gather a lot of information. So you have like a new view, right? You're on the hill, on the mountain. You have a different view that nobody else has because only you and your team have gotten there. And you have your information. I think collecting that information, constantly collecting that and communicating with each other, and then setting goals and then finding what's working, what's not working is how you do it. Now, to really define that specific like beachhead or where you want to go, I mean, you just have to take the best information that you can get and make a decision to go after it. Um, as far as focus, I really believe you only can have focus once you have alignment. And what I mean by that is like defining where we're going to be. I like to do 3 years out and 1 year out. If we can all agree on that's where we want to be, then we can actually focus on the things that will get us there. And I think a lot of times people don't have that short term and long term view. So they're grasping for things to try to figure out what to focus on. And they may not even have had the conversation of what to focus on. So I like to kind of think of it as those focal points, that mission, that North Star, that 3 year, that 1 year, and then the 90 days we do OKRs. And that kind of creates a focal point of alignment. And then within that, we can get deep on what actually needs to get done. That's how I view it. I hope that answered the question.
It does. I'm gonna throw you a trickster in there though. What
Okay.
happens if you're you did the 3, you did the 5, right? You're in the middle of it, everybody's aligned.
Yep.
Then here's the screwball. All of a sudden your market gets a hell of a lot funding and it becomes crowded and you have to make a big bet because I hear a lot of little bets that you're making in there, a couple big
Yep.
bets. You have to make a big bet to pivot and go in another direction. How do you kind of evaluate that and um, you know, again, decide, but also get everybody realigned
Yeah.
with this new, let's call it blue ocean, um, exiting the red ocean.
But I think cadence matters. So having that annual meeting, those quarterly meetings with the leadership team, and then having a weekly meeting. So like a lot of times bigger pivots will happen at the annual or at the quarterly, and you have micro pivots, meaning like can't get this thing done or this is getting our way on those weekly meetings. So like having that cadence that you are coming together, sharing information, and have a specific time to actually make a decision, I think is really important because otherwise decisions get pushed out. And I think one of the most important roles of the CEO or any leadership team member is making decisions. As the CEO, you get to make the final decision, but you also have the decision to allow your head of product to make a decision. And the head of product has the opportunity to let the product manager make a decision. But if decisions aren't being made, I think that's one of the biggest issues. And to allow decisions being made is that you have to have that cadence of those meetings, I think. So a lot of times, and it's not getting right to your answer, but a lot of times things get pushed and things don't get decided because they don't have a time to do it. When you get your team together and I think you gather the information and have that open conversation of what should we do, what is working, what's not working. I think I say that so much that it seems so, like it doesn't really matter, but like what's our best alternative and having that open conversation with your team and letting them be able to speak what they think, and then making a decision. And some people may align and some people won't, and some people might leave. Some people may align, like disagree and still commit. Those are the good, great team members. But I think as long as you make a decision, you have to make a decision to move.
Yep.
And I think in our world, like if you don't make a decision, don't move, you fail.
Yeah. I agree.
That's my logo, by the way. So it's, three, moving in a direction. When you're driving down the street and they're like telling your car to move that way, and you have, those lights, that's ours. It's in alignment. It's unity, and it's always moving in the direction together. So um,
I like
I
that.
think that's so important. Like after 25 years of working with growth companies, I see that over and over again. It's just we need to make decisions. You have to have a time and place to do it,
Yep.
and you need to be open and let everybody be open, and then make a decision. And typically, if you do it right, most people follow, and then they add to it and make it even better.
I would say in the last business, like we ran workshops around shared vision, shared understanding, and how to create that and stuff like that. So
Yeah, you have to use the tools in a cadence to create the habits, and that's how it works. It's kind of similar to like people making New Year's resolutions to go to the gym. They have all these great ideas, but then they stop going around February. You know.
yep.
All right, so here's the last question. The final question is more of a scenario. You are trapped on a desert island the rest of your life. You have food and water, you have healthcare, you have everything, shelter, everything that you need, but you're missing one thing. The one thing that you're missing is entertainment. You have absolutely no entertainment. But luckily for you, an old 80s boombox drifts ashore with unlimited batteries. But you can only bring one album to listen to the rest of your life. Jeremy, what album are you going to bring?
I don't know what the album is called, but is definitely let's call it Motley Crue.
Okay, Motley Crue. I like this. This is the first one that said Motley Crue. I can maybe help you with the album. Do you know what it looks like?
any of their popular songs, like
Okay. Well, we had Dr. Feelgood. You remember Dr. Feelgood?
Feel Good, Kickstart My Heart, like any
Yep.
any of those.
That was a big one. That was a big one.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to remember the other. I can picture the album artwork, but I can't picture the names.
Realistically, any hair band, most hair band, 80s, like I would definitely be down to be entertained for. I mean, they just set the party, atmosphere.
And they set the bar high with that atmosphere.
Exactly. But I'm definitely a Motley Crue fan.
That's the first Motley Crue that I've got on this answer, and I like it. I'm happy that someone finally said Motley Crue. That's awesome. All right, cool. Well, thanks for joining me on Tech Scenes. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This is a fun conversation.